day after. I don't think we're gonna. Hopefully we'll have an audience right there. So father-in-law just put the post out. Usually a Moshe Eber, but maybe the name doesn't.
And Simulation Gimel, middle of the first sif, big sif.
The matching in here?
In here, right now we're outside.
Okay.
So, I mean, right now we're inside, so we're outside of this, but we'll get here. So.
Okay. Remind me where we were last week.
Yeah, there was, we took a Hanukkah break, so.
Right.
You want to look inside? You want a book?
I do, but I'm just like sort of energyless to go run and get one. And we're alive already. We can start all over.
Okay, Reish and Gimel Sif. We're in the middle of Sif Aleph, and we said that this Siman, Reish and Gimel, discusses the laws of Shehiyah and Chazara, which is the laws of leaving a food on top of a fire into Shabbos, as well as returning a food onto a fire on Shabbos itself. So we so far read in the Mechaber. We're going to read again from the beginning and recap. Kirish Yesur Kedei V'Seisan Al Pir Kedei L'Mal Yesh B'Makom Svis Shvei Kedei V'Sim Hus Kedei V'Shib Seish Shal Zeisam V'Eitzam Asulit V'Mal Tafshim V'Yei V'Hashri Salah Elim Kenis V'Ashik V'Tzoker V'Stamek V'Rali L'Aklamech Shevi Chata Shu Chai Shal Isbashul Klal Himen Shu Chai Masech Daitim V'Mena L'Mocha B'Cholai Yechel Isbashul L'Chitoi Al Nisbashul K'tzas V'Isbashul K'tzach V'Isbashul K'tzach V'Stam V'Yafle Shin Shema Yechata V'As L'Ashei Salah Elim Ken Goraf. Deine Schätze meine Kolm, ich konnte deine Schkisa Kolm beefer der Maid Khum. Was macht die Chai Mutter Kilo heißt der Kul Chai, da Idee Kach sich da men viel in a Grufa Pirsche mach Khum Tanu Oktuma. Da Idee Kach sich da men viel in a Grufa Oktuma. Mutter lust mich like der besam gut so wie mis Kash. Gwab Mutter lust Slav viel in a Grufa. Okay, this is a review. We said the Mechaber here delineates 3 different ovens and begins giving the law of each oven. The first oven in discussion, which is the Kira, is practically the law by our ovens of today. So again, we said the following, that by a Kira oven that is fueled with good fuel, which is again our ovens of today, similar to a Kira oven, then the halacha is that you, according to this opinion that we just finished reading, any food that is not fully cooked to the point that further cooking is detrimental to the owner of the food is forbidden to be left on this open flame into Shabbos. So in this Kira oven, even if your cholent's fully cooked, according to this approach, you cannot leave your food on top of the coals, in the oven or on the oven. Remember, we said there's 2 ways these ovens worked. One is on top and one is inside. The main use was on top because inside it's too hot. So they would, there were 2 holes and they would put it on top. The handles would hold it up on top so you can open it up, dish out food. It's really cool. They should manufacture them again.
Even fully cooked, you're saying?
This is this approach. Yes. Right. This is not final.
We changed that, I remember.
That changed. This is the first approach. This is the first approach the Mechaber takes, that even if it's fully cooked, it's still no good because we suspect that a person wants it to cook more, and he may come to instinctively take the rod and stoke away. However, in all the following cases, it is permitted. Number 1, if it's fueled with bad fuel, which we said is twigs or straw. Number 2, fueled with good fuel, but the fuel was covered. Number 3, fueled with good fuel, but the fuel was removed. Grufa, removed. Tuma is covered, you covered it. Grufa is you removed it. Another case, right before Shabbos, you threw in a nice big piece of flesh that takes a really long time for it to cook. You've showed that you're disinterested in the fire. There's no way even your stoking, the best stoking in the world, is not going to do anything to this meat to have it ready by tonight. By tomorrow, it'll be ready regardless of your stoking, so there's no reason anymore to suspect.
Okay, so even with this opinion that says fully cooked, you can get, these are leniencies.
Correct.
Or whatever.
These leniencies, these exceptions apply in all cases.
So then we could actually go by, we could actually go by this because the black is one of those leniencies. The presence of a black is one of those leniencies. That's the covering, that's covered the...
Well, we'll discuss it. Okay. Right now we're learning the theoretical laws, and then we have to bring it down.
How we behave now is basically that matches the Mechaber, but we don't.
It's based on the Mechaber, correct.
But okay, that's different because we actually can do.
We'll discuss the
without
differences.
fully
We'll see.
cooked.
There are
I
differences.
remember
Okay, I just want to summarize,
Yeah,
finish
yeah.
the first if, and then I'll go to, we'll finish halacha ma'aseh. The tanner, we said the second type of oven, which is the tanner, is very, very hot. So therefore, even if you use bad fuel, it's forbidden even to place the pot even next to it. We said by a kir, always next to is okay, but by a tanner, even next to it is not okay. So long as the oven is yatziledes, it is no good. You're not allowed to leave even fully cooked food that's not detrimental for the cook is not detrimental in it, according to this approach. So we said the third type of oven, the kupach, which has room for only one pot on top of it. The halacha is that if it's fueled with good fuel, it has the same status as a tanner, which is never okay to leave food on it. Meaning none of the exceptions apply, even if you throw in something raw, and even if you remove the fuel, and even if you cover the fuel, and even if it's bad fuel, like by the tanner. By a kupach, however, if it's bad fuel, then it's okay. If it's bad fuel, then it has a status of a kira with bad fuel, which is always good. Well, if it's good fuel, then it has a status of a tanner with good fuel, which is never good. So basically, the kira it's very simple. It's either good fuel and never okay, or bad fuel and always okay. You never have to resort to throwing in the piece of raw meat or removing. It's never necessary. It never helps one way or the other. Here comes the big, most important words for us. Says the Ramah that our ovens is like a kir, so that's what we need to know. What is the status of our ovens today? Because our ovens today are made very, very differently than the ovens of back then. Today they open from the side, so he says they have the same status as a kira oven. So we're in the middle. Sorry, we have the most lenient oven. We have the most lenient oven.
When we say oven, we're talking really stove, what we call a stove now, right?
Right. So I remember I mentioned 2 weeks ago that the stove top we ruled on, or read it from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, has the same status as a kira.
What you just said.
No, this is talking about an oven. Oh. Our ovens of today have the same status of the kira of back then. Our stovetops of today are not really discussed. But the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch mentions it as the same status as an oven of back then, of an oven today. Kira, correct. Okay. Bottom line, that's what it's called in modern Hebrew. It's called kirayim, right? It's called kirayim. They don't know that the original Hebrew referred to a kira was an actual oven. This is translation. Okay. So the Mechaber discusses the law of b'diavad, you transgressed, and he said, bottom line, if you transgress, then you have to wait till after Shabbos kedei sheyasu in order to be able to benefit from the food. So a person who didn't follow the laws that we're going to lay out, and even though we in actuality are more lenient than what we just described, nonetheless, even we agree there are restrictions, and if those restrictions are not followed, meaning somebody who didn't know and didn't follow the Shiur restrictions, then the food is forbidden on Shabbos to be eaten until after Shabbos is over, with enough time to have done that act. Now he brings the second opinion, which is really the way we rule like. Okay, so here he says a big chiddush. The second opinion says that really we argue on the first approach and say that so long as the food has reached half of its cooking. Till now, what the Mechaber has been saying, if it's not fully cooked to the point of detriment, then it's no good. You're not allowed to leave it on an open fire. You can't leave it on a kir with good fuel, etc., etc. You can't leave it on a tanner. Now he says, no. Once it's reached half cooked, we no longer worry of stoking for 2 reasons. One reason is because it's ready. It will for sure be ready to eat by the time the night comes, then the course for this, by the time that the course of this course in the meal is reached, the food will be ready. So what's the worry you're going to stoke it? For what purpose?
Is the Mechaber who changes course?
Well, he brings two opinions. He's allowed to. This is a second opinion, right? And so therefore this would help even by a tanur. Even by a tanur, it's not just by a kira. Until now we've been saying the kira has all these leniencies. This, if the food is half cooked, it helps by every oven, because once it's half cooked, there's no worry you're going to stoke. So what difference does it make what oven it is? So it's mutter by every single oven. The second reason is because since it's edible in a time of need, a person is not so instinctively worried about his food, so he won't come to stoke it. Then he says, so here comes another chiddush. And this chiddush I'm already telling you now, we do not rule like. Okay.
Well, what about the first two opinions? Doesn't he tell us which one?
He doesn't. No, correct. Good point. And the answer is the following. Often the Mechaber in the Shulchan Aruch will bring two opinions and not arbitrate. Now we have a accepted rule for when that happens, and the accepted rule is as follows: Stam v'yesh eimrim halachik is stam. Whenever the Mechaber brings an opinion as a stam, and the second opinion as a yesh eimrim, meaning he didn't write yesh eimrim and yesh eimrim. If he says yesh eimrim, yesh eimrim, then usually we say he passes like the second yesh eimrim. However, if he brings stam, meaning he writes a first opinion, this is the halacha. He doesn't write in a way some opinions say. And then only after he writes some opinions say, so he's paskening like his first opinion. Halacha is stam.
So this is the case with two yesh yomi.
No.
Oh, this is the case
with stam and yesh eimrim.
Oh.
He didn't start off saying yesh eimrim. He started off stam.
So then we would tilt.
So the Mechaber rules like the first opinion. So according to Tzfat, we need to be careful that the food is fully cooked to the point of detriment. However, the Ramah writes that the custom is to be lenient like the second opinion. So the Ramah sets the score for us, for Ashkenazim. He says the Mechaber left you guys hanging. I got your back. The custom by Ashkenaz is to be lenient, and that's why, according to Ashkenazi jury, once the food is ben drusai, is half cooked, none of this applies, which is a big savior because practically most of our Shabbos food usually is half cooked by 4 shkia. Right? We start cooking in Erev Shabbos at the beginning of the day. So therefore, it's already half cooked for shkia. So the Ramah really here saves the day for us based on the second opinion of the Mechaber and really saves us from this possibility of transgression. While according to the first opinion of the Mechaber, the first approach, it's very common that your food is not yet fully cooked to the point it's detrimental. It's very common for that to happen. In fact, probably most of Shabbos food is that state before shkia. And therefore, minadin, according to this first approach, you would need to follow one of the exceptions that we mentioned by Akira in order to be allowed to leave your food on a flame into Shabbos.
So really, most of our food is not cooked enough to go by the lenience of the.
Tell me for yourself: is your cholent before Shabbos fully cooked to the point further cooking is detrimental? Is your soup fully cooked to the point further cooking is detrimental?
What if it's fully cooked? It's mamish fully.
No, the Mechaber wrote fully cooked to the point of detrimental because he's not just worried that people want to eat food that's fully cooked. He's worried people also want to eat food that tastes good. So you may instinctively stoke the coals to eat good food. If further cooking will make it detrimental, then no one's going to do that. No one's going to burn their food. So there's no worry of stoking the coals.
That's very hazy. A fully cooked soup that you would serve, it's now ready. I don't really want to cook it anymore. It's perfect. Not necessarily going to be detrimental, but if you don't want to bother cooking anymore, it doesn't need any more here.
But everyone knows the more soup condenses, the richer it is. Everyone knows that. So it tastes better. You're not in cuisine, I see.
No, I mean, it doesn't taste better necessarily.
Agree with me?
No, you cook it to the.
You don't agree with me?
No, I don't agree at all.
You don't care.
Chicken soup is done. It's done. It's ready to serve. A little more heat wouldn't make it detrimental, but it's fully cooked. It's wonderful. This is how I want to serve it. It's not going to make it bad. It's not going to make it worse by putting a little more heat on it. It'll just make it.
So you're bringing up a case. What about if a person doesn't care? That's your case.
Well, yeah, it's like
One way or the other. It's not detrimental. It's not beneficial.
what kind of detrimental? Usually there isn't detrimental by adding more heat or leaving it on longer.
What do you mean? It burns. Your cholent is going to burn. It's not detrimental.
Well, you don't on the flame and on whatever you have the heat setting on. It's not set up to burn. It's not going to burn.
We're talking about the Kira oven that didn't follow the exceptions. You're talking about a Shabbos cloth.
Eventually it could burn.
If I left on a high flame, okay, my cholent, a high flame on your stovetop. By the time Shabbos comes, it's going to be a piece. By the time the meal comes the next day, it's going to be a piece of rock.
Well, okay, if you put it that way, then
yeah.
Okay.
So further cooking is detrimental.
Okay, for a lot of further cooking you have to add is detrimental, not a little bit of further.
Bottom line is like this.
Easy.
Bottom line is like this. But this is the Sephardim have this issue because they suspect for the first opinion.
Yeah.
So they're going to have this issue that if there's further cooking, if further cooking can be beneficial, they don't have the heter. Also, the Mishnah Berurah, by the way, not just Sephardim, some Ashkenazim also a machmir. The Mishnah Berurah here writes, I'm a Shich Rabbi Beilish Leides, Vitek Duve, Rasha Kaza the Bnei Yisrael, Dukimitz and Ikshal Beilish, Lanua Kenanach Lemaincha. I said the Rakashim Zeller at the Hen Besesef Gufim Mashetek there Shen Bestam Deshnim Shem Shem Mashigam that the Lachmer. Kamakim and Kirch Dimchis Bamakin Shvanago Ha'am Keisha Emek, which cost a Rama. In Fizil Hila Vita is a shame which could talk about Sheikh Sakunesh. Achim Mersh and Sacha, Davik Mishabo, Ochim Kirchis Hamets and Vashal is a Tashal of Rome. I'll pit with the Vashal Afshalis Vashal and Skira Hitsim Shulu in Henom in a pit, but she's going to be shooting with a cycle of light. This was the Bir Halacha I read. The Bir Halacha was where the Mishnah Berurah added his personal Chidushim. Meaning here in the Mishnah Berurah, the side called Mishnah Berurah, he would write like he followed very much in tune like the Alter Rebbe. We should have a Shulchan Aruch. Let me get it. He followed very much like the Alter Rebbe Shita, where not to bring Chidushim of his own, not to write his own novelties. Compile what previous Achreinim have ruled and write it down. That's what the Alter Rebbe did in the Shulchan Aruch. Whenever the Alter Rebbe wanted to give his own Chiddush, he either didn't write it, he saved it for the Kunshas Achron, or he wrote in parentheses. That's what he did. So Mishnah Berurah also, he tried not to put his own Chiddushim, meaning his own novelties of ruling, halacha, in the, over here in the Mishnah Berurah, and he saved it for Bir Halacha. Sometimes in the Bir Halacha he just, brings a contradiction or an explanation, but often it's also Chidushei Dinim, a lot of novelties of the Mishnah Berurah. So while in the Mishnah Berurah he goes like the party line of the Ramah, because nobody argues when Agu Laka, right? The custom is to be lenient. In the Bir Halacha he writes the following. Before I read what he says, I wanted to show you how the Alter Rebbe ruled on this. Let's see how the Alter Rebbe wrote this halacha. Shift test. So here, look, first of all, number one, in the beginning, when he writes the first halacha about the kira, he already writes, like the final opinion, that if the food was cooked to Michael Ben Drusai, half cooked, then it's okay. So he already integrated the final opinion in the beginning of his halacha.
Final opinion, you don't mean the final opinion.
Meaning the first stam opinion of the Mechaber, the second opinion the Mechaber brings, became the stam opinion of the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch.
He doesn't refer to the Ramah.
No, he never does. Only in the footnotes.
Because it sort of matches the Ramah, or the Ramah just...
That matches the second opinion of the Mechaber, as the Ramah concludes that that's our custom. And therefore he already integrated it. He doesn't write the Yesh Eimer. He writes the same way the Mechaber wrote stringently like that opinion. He writes lenient like his opinion. And then in Tsfat he writes that there's an opinion who's stringent, the Yesh Eimer, meaning he did the exact opposite of the Mechaber. The exact opposite. He says that the argument that even if it's fully cooked, but further cooking is beneficial for it, then you need to follow one of the other exceptions, otherwise it has an Isra Shahiyah on Shabbos. And he concludes, the custom is to be stringent. So according to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, for us, for Chassidim, we don't have to worry about this Bir Halacha. We don't have to worry about the Mechaber's first opinion. We are lenient. However,
So how come so many Ashkenazim use a blech then? Because it's just, because the fire
Great question.
cooks.
Great question. Let's do the beer.
And I can answer myself. A fire cooks things seriously. If you leave something
So it may
open-
burn.
Yeah,
Prevent it from burning.
Yeah, obviously, it definitely could overcook it too easily. The black is just technically. a better
Okay,
way-
hold that question. I have about 4 answers for that question, and I may have to add a 5th one now that you said what you just said. Okay, so what then does the beer halacha add here? So he says the following. He has issue with the Ramah. He has issue with the Ramah here making this blank statement. The custom is to be lenient, and nobody argues. None of the Mefarshim argue. But the Be'er Halacha, the Mishnah Be'er Halacha, he chooses to poke some holes in this. And really, and the intent, as we're gonna explain, is really to be stringent like the Machaber. So there's many Litvish who follow this, and they are stringent like the Machaber in this, just like Sfarad. Yeah, Litvish Ashkenaz.
Yeah.
So what does he write? He says the following. He says the whole basis of this second opinion that says if it's cooked at Medrusai, it's okay, there's no issue anymore, is based on the Rosh. The Rosh was the father of Ashkenazi Rishonim. He was the greatest Ashkenazi Rishon, and Ashkenazi custom is based on. So he says, let's look at what he actually had to say. He said the following. The Jewish people are very, very adukim. They are very religious regarding the law of Einik Shabbos. And therefore, when it comes to having Einik Shabbos of hot food, they are overzealous to sometimes break the boundaries of halacha in order so they can gain having good food for Shabbos. And therefore, we can be lenient to allow them to leave less than fully cooked food on the open flame into Shabbos, because anyways, they won't listen to us. That's what he writes. If they they won't listen to us anyways.
They said less than cooked. We were talking about that.
Less than fully cooked. No, less than half cooked. Everyone agrees it's no good.
Oh, so what did it say there?
Less than fully cooked. Less than fully cooked. The Mechaber says it has to be fully cooked to the point detrimental to be allowed. Right? So he says, Mishpur says, take a look at the basis of the leniency. The basis of leniency is because they won't listen. They won't listen. They're too involved in their children. They won't listen to us. So he says it's implied from here that in truth, ideally, people who want to listen should be told, hey, be stringent about this. And he says also the Beis Yosef, who wrote the first opinion as Stam, his opinion is to be stringent. As I already told you, that's the general rule in Shulchan Aruch. Stam v'yeshem, halachic is Stam. And so even though the Ramah then wrote the custom is to be lenient, it's only because, and as I said before, they won't listen to us. And therefore, the Chatchila, certainly it's proper for one to make sure that his food is fully cooked to the point it's detrimental, meaning that further cooking is not beneficial, if he wants to leave it on the open flame into Shabbos. But he says, but in a time of need, like guests just arrived 10 minutes before Shkia, and you need to put out something up quick, and it won't be half ready before Shabbos starts, you could be lenient. So that is the approach of the Mishnah Berurah regarding the house.
So again, okay, so if you go straight by the Mechaber's first opinion, you're like the Sephardim do, right?
Right.
You can't leave not fully cooked food to the point that the cooking more will be damaging. You can't leave that on an open fire. You cannot.
Correct.
But Ashkenazim can leave
Based on the custom, yes.
less than fully cooked food
Correct.
on an open fire?
Correct.
Then why do we use a blech?
Well, you asked that before. So based on all this, why do we use a blech? So there are a few answers. Answer number one is because it seemingly throughout the generations, meaning since this was written in the Shulchan Aruch, we have become more machmer. We have become more machmer. We decided to be machmer like the first opinion of the Mechaber, like the second opinion of the Alter. That's one explanation.
In that direction, in other words.
Yeah, we decided the Chatchila to be machmer, meaning even though halacha l'maisa, you don't have to. You are allowed to leave less than half cooked food, less than fully cooked food that's already half cooked on an open flame into Shabbos, and that's the way we paskin. The way we paskin is that if somebody doesn't have a blech, when somebody called me, they just moved, they didn't have an extra, they didn't have a blech. How come what my husband says there's no way we can leave something in an open fire into Shabbos? What do we do? So the wife asked me. I said that the halacha is that if the fire is that if the food is already half cooked, which it was, then it's mutter.
Wait a second, I thought the whole idea was the Ashkenazim based on the second opinion, the Ramaz, is that you can do it even not fully cooked.
Correct. So that's why I said if it's already half cooked, then it's mutter.
No, if it's not fully cooked, you can even do it, I thought you said. Not fully cooked.
Not fully cooked means, but at least half cooked.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got it.
It has to be at least half cooked.
Oh, okay, that's what's confusing to me. Okay,
Yes.
at least half cooked.
At least half
Ramah,
cooked, meaning it's not meaning the Ramah doesn't disagree with the Gemara. There's a Gemara that has these restrictions.
Stoking the coal.
The question is from what degree. So he says it's only from below half cooked. While, meaning the second opinion says from below half cooked. While the first opinion says no, it's any food that's not fully cooked to the point that you're not. That's the machlekes. But in any event, so since the food was half cooked, I told them it's mutter, it's not a problem. But it seems like the reason why today we do the blech is that's one reason. Perhaps we are machmir lechatchila. Another explanation is simply for the sake of being able to do chazara on Shabbos, because you can't return food on Shabbos if your fire isn't covered. That could be another reason. So in order to benefit from doing chazara, therefore we make sure to cover it. A third reason is just for simplicity reasons. Imagine if we didn't use a blech. Imagine if the system was, we rely on the Ramah, the food is half cooked, we don't use a blech anymore. How many Jews wouldn't know the intricacies of this halacha and come to transgress and eat less than half cooked food on an open flame? Many. They wouldn't know why we don't use a blech. They wouldn't know about this whole thing I just said. There's two opinions, and we follow the second opinion, that this food is half cooked, it's okay. And they would have to check and even those who do know, they would have to make sure to remember Erev Shabbos before Shkia to check the food to make sure it's half cooked. So who needs the extra headaches? Who? So just to avoid the issue, we use a blech. We escape it. So those are the three reasons. And you wanted to add your reason more so the food doesn't burn, okay?
Okay. And you heard of this thing called the unblech? People have this, it's a pan, and then you put water in it, and then you put another metal thing over it. Have you heard of the unblech?
I have heard of that. Why is it called un?
I don't know.
UN?
Yeah.
Unblech? Well, what is it again? What do they do?
It's a pan. It's
Right.
a water. You put water in sort of a wiry, like a black shaped.
Right, on top of the flame.
On top of the flame, you put water. And then there's another sheet that goes over and sort of covers over the water in between. And
Right, that's certainly a blech. It's a kosher blech. What's the issue?
Okay, so maybe people are using it.
I think they use it just in order to spread out the heat properly.
Okay, or maybe so they don't have to put things on a cover. It's supposed to look. It's not cooking. It's not really like, I don't know what it is. I think maybe they were using it to.
It's the same as a blech, but I guess they're doing it in order to dissipate the heat properly.
Maybe, okay, maybe that's it.
It's not halachic reason why they do it.
I thought maybe people.
There's no halach involved in putting water in that pan.
Yeah. Okay.
It's probably just to dissipate the
They
heat.
wouldn't have to turn and put things on something extra. I thought maybe, no, you still have to put something on.
Now, where would this case be very practical is in the case of a water urn. In a water urn, usually the food, if you set it up right before Shabbos, even if you set up an hour before Shabbos, depending how much water you're putting in the urn, it will not have enough time to reach half of its cooking before Shkia,
To boil the water, not just.
before Shabbos starts.
The water being half cooked, you're saying? Water
Yes,
itself?
water needs to be half cooked before sunset. It will not reach half cooked before sunset.
Yeah, it's hard to calculate.
So therefore, that's the one very, very, very common example of where even Ashkenazim have to be very careful. Certainly Sfardim.
You boil the water, you make sure you're.
So that's why you have to make sure to do it with sometime before Shabbos. Make sure to do it an hour, 2 hours before Shabbos. If you forgot, one time I forgot, I did it 20 minutes before Shkia. And as I'm walking to Shul for Mincha, I remembered, what on earth did I just do? I ran back home, I didn't tell anyone anything. I pulled it out of the plug, poured out all the water, and everyone's looking at me like I'm nuts. What are you doing? You're being destructive. Where's our hot water for Shabbos? I said I'll explain later, and I had to ran back to Mincha.
You ready to pull the plug out?
It wasn't Shabbos.
No,
it was
it
before
wasn't
Shkia, but I knew that it wouldn't be half cooked before.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing of water. It takes time. Not going to be half cooked before Shkia.
Yeah. I mean, you could
So I had to spill it out.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, we wouldn't be able to use it.
You couldn't use it anyway.
Yeah, you can use it anyways. Exactly. And I wouldn't transgress. So that's one case example where even today it's very, very practical because A, it's not covered, there's no blech, and B, it can be not half cooked because people usually put it up right before Shabbos, as opposed to other foods that you usually cook it with, sometime beforehand. Another practical case is the crock pot. The crock pot, which is naturally a slow cooker, can very often allow the children to not be half cooked by the time Shabbos comes in. So this would force us, even according to Ashkenazi custom, to require to use one of the other leniencies that we mentioned,
Right,
such as covering the inside with tinfoil, to make it grufa, to make it allowed. So the Ramah, as I said, saved the day for most cases, but there still are cases that, even according to Ashkenazi custom, we would need to be very careful. Now, the Ramah here mentions, the Mechaber here mentioned, with the second opinion, another glitch, and that was as follows. He says, not only does this opinion hold that you're allowed to leave food that's not yet fully cooked, but is half cooked on an open flame into Shabbos, but even on Shabbos itself, if you remove the chillent off the fire, and it wasn't yet fully cooked, but was already half cooked, you can put it back on. He says that once a food is once a food is half cooked, there's no longer a cooking prohibition involved in putting it on a fire on Shabbos.
Returning it,
or even initially putting it would just be a chazar prohibition, but not a cooking prohibition. For example, if I have half-cooked schnitzel, it's half-cooked, can I put it on top of an upside-down pot on top of my blech on Shabbos?
It's not oily.
According to this second opinion, he says yes.
It's not oily.
If not oily, correct. If not wet. He says yes. He says once it's half cooked, it's considered cooked. That is the premises of this second opinion. Practically, as I said before, we absolutely do not rule this way. This nobody holds of. Not Ashkenazim, not Sephardim. This is completely thrown out. The Alter Rebbe gave the silent treatment to this opinion, didn't mention it throughout his entire Hilchos Shabbos. It's never mentioned even once.
This is about returning.
This is about heating up on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Heating up on Shabbos a food that's not yet fully cooked. The Alter Rebbe and Shulchan Aruch rules if the food ain't yet fully cooked 100%, there is a biblical cooking prohibition involved.
Yeah.
No leniency. Doesn't mention any dissenting opinion.
Right.
The Mechaber here does mention the dissenting opinion, that if it's half cooked, it's okay. So for example, if somebody took the cholent off the blech, they were dishing out cholent and they put it back on, and somebody tasted the cholent and says, hey, the potatoes aren't fully cooked, the beans aren't fully cooked, the beans are still hard, etc., etc. So now we have a question, can the remaining cholent be eaten? This question comes up often whenever you're serving cholent at night. Some people like serving cholent at night, Friday night. The 1 o'clock midnight cholent fest. So it's really meant for the next day's meal. The question is, if you discover, and it happens often, that something's not fully cooked, it doesn't have to be that everything's not fully cooked. Even if only one food item is not fully cooked. You discover the meat's not fully cooked. You discover the beans are still a little hard. You are now when you put it back on, did you transgress the cooking laws? So if it's already half cooked, says the second opinion, no, you didn't. So everything's still okay. But practically, we do not rule this way. So halacha l'maaseh, is the food mutar b'diavad? Answer. According to the Alter Rebbe and the Shulchan Aruch, we would have to paskin the food is asur. Cannot eat the cholent anymore. So if in my house, I took the cholent off the blech, I served people, I put it back on, and then somebody told me something's not fully cooked in it, wish that cholent goodbye.
And you also have to follow all the rules of chazar, of returning, right?
Doesn't matter, you're cooking. It's not fully cooked.
No, but I mean, I'm saying, if you give yourself
even if he held on to the whole time, he had intent.
Right, but if it is a fully cooked item, you have to follow the chazar.
Correct,
right?
correct.
Held it,
Correct. Here I'm talking about that the only issue that was found, which is the main issue, is that it's not fully cooked. In such a case, you cannot eat the cholent on Shabbos anymore, according to the Alter Rebbe. Why? Because the Alter Rebbe doesn't even mention this dissenting opinion. According to the Alter Rebbe, this dissenting opinion doesn't exist in halacha. Meaning it exists in terms of you want to learn, encyclopedic knowledge of Jewish law. Yes, you can learn about it. Encyclopedia Talmudit will put it in. But if you're talking about halacha, do we bring this opinion do we recruit it for the purposes of making halachic decisions? He completely omits it, says no, and this is the way the Shulchan rules. However, other poskim, not the Alter Rebbe, as we see the Mechaber, rule differently. They do bring this opinion, they do make mention of this opinion in halacha, and there's a general rule which says as follows. Whenever there's a dispute if something's allowed initially on Shabbos, then after the fact, we never give a fine. Meaning, if some place can say something's mutter, even the chatchila, and then after the fact, we do not say it's asr. Because some say it's even mutter initially. So even though, of course, we're machmer initially, and everyone agrees here we're machmer initially, the food isn't fully cooked, you can't put it back on. Nevertheless, b'di'evet, if it was already done, some place can rule that b'di'evet it's okay. So is the ruling of the Mishnah Brura.
You can return it even though it's not fully.
No, the chatchila you can't. But if you did, you can still eat the food.
I see.
No one says the chatchila you can. According to the main opinion, you're cooking on Shabbos, biblical prohibition. But nonetheless, the diavad, if it was already done, can you eat the food? So in such a case, in one time in Brachel when this happened, so I had to do a whole interrogation. Who's in the yeshiva? Is it a Litvish yeshiva? Is it a Hasidic yeshiva? A Hasidic yeshiva tell me follow the Alter Rebbe, the food's awesome. Litvish yeshiva, you can follow the Mishnah Brura, who says that you can rely on the second opinion that says the food is mutter. Anyway, so this is another case example of a machlekes. I'm back inside. Now says the Mechaber, all this is in a case that this entire sif that's talking about leaving food inside on top of an oven, kira, tanner, etc., is all talking about that the pot is not sitting directly on the coals, but rather sitting on a I guess you would, I don't know what they call it, something that in barbecues they have this metal contraption that you put the pot on top of it, in order so it's not like sitting on the inside the actual fire. So if it's sitting on this metal contraption, then that's what we're referring to. That's when it's okay. However, if it's sitting on the actual coals itself, says the Mechaber, according to everyone, it is forbidden.
We're talking about this returning issue now, or are we talking about the original?
Now we're talking about everything.
Everything. So what are our stoves now? What do our stoves got that?
Hold your horses.
Are those
Let's understand what the Mechaber is saying. Let me first explain what you just said. If I'm making a barbecue, okay, and before Shabbos, I don't have this contraption. So I took the pot of cholent, of soup, and I rested it on the coals of the barbecue. Okay, it's rest on the coals. Says the Mechaber, it's usher to eat on Shabbos. It's usher to do it, and it's usher to eat on Shabbos. It's only mutter to leave a food on a heat source on Shabbos if it's distanced from its heat source.
Not with a full blech, but distance, like a grate, like a stove grate would be
exactly, like a stove grate, a grate that elevates it from the fire. It has to be distance. It can't be sitting on the coals. Why? Because it's considered hatmana. He says, whenever you have a pot touching the heat source, it's considered insulation. And the Mechaber rules, it's a famous ruling of the Sfardim of the Mechaber, that hatmana b'miksa shmei hatmana. Even a little bit of insulation is defined as insulation. Normally, we think in order for something to be insulated, the whole thing has to be covered. Mechaber rules no. Even a slight amount of insulation is defined as insulation. And therefore, according to him, it's no good. Now let's discuss, according to the Mechaber, whether you can use a blech on Shabbos, or whether you can use an electric plate on Shabbos.
Because it could be
according like to many Sephardi poskim, including Rabbi Ben Zion Abba Shaul, Mordechai Eliyahu, and others, Sephardim are prohibited from using an electric plata or blech on Shabbos.
Because it's like putting on the coals, they view it as coals.
They say it's hatmana.
But how are they with putting it on a stove grate? How are they with putting it on a stove grate, with a normal stove with a flame under it? A stove with a grate.
Right, so that would be mutter because it's elevated. But then your food would have to be fully cooked.
Yeah,
the point is detrimental.
Right.
So I actually don't know what they do, those who follow this opinion. All those who follow Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu follow this opinion. They do not have a Shabbos plata. Someone who worked for Mordechai once told me that they tried to develop a Shabbos plata that was okay, even according to his opinion, like with some elevation, made
maybe,
in a special way.
Maybe the unblech was done for that. Maybe that's why they developed the unblech. They call it unblech.
The unblech.
Yeah, it's got some
would be
separation.
good because it has two sets.
Maybe that's why it was made for Sephardim.
Maybe.
Always wondered.
But that's the opinion of Mordechai. Ravad Yosef took a very different approach. And he says, no. I agree there's a concept called the Tmana b'mikzas that the Machaber here is talking about. So don't take a pot of cholent and leave it on coals into Shabbos. I agree. I can't argue on Moran. That's Moran. That's what he says. But don't take the case of leaving a pot on top of coals and now try to connect that with a Shabbos plata or a Shabbos plata. There's no connection. The reason why the Mechaber is stringent in the case of sitting on coals is not because he holds any heat source that touches the food, the pot is considered atmana. That's not the reason. If you understand that as being the reason, then indeed, like Ramon Chaliyah, you'll say it's usher to use a blech or a Shabbos plata. But the reason is because since it's movable material, like coals, it's movable, and you're able to potentially, you can fully insulate the pot inside of it. Therefore, even if you don't choose to do so, it's considered insulation because it's an insulatory material that you can do insulation with. However, a metal sheet used as a blech or a Shabbos plata, you can never come to turn that into insulating material. It'll never surround the entire pot. It's not possible. So therefore, Mechaber never talked about that case. Mechaber was never stringent in that case, and therefore that's what most Sephardim rely upon. All Sephardim today who use the Shabbos plata are relying on the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, who says, I agree at Tmana b'mikzas is aser, but this is not a case of Tmana b'mikzas. Those who are machmir disagree with this analyzation. They follow Mordechai Yo's approach that says, no, this is Tmana b'mikzas, you cannot use it on Shabbos. What you can also do, some of them do, is you can also have for even for stove tops, you have these these round metal pieces that you put with a handle. You put it on top of it in order to elevate the pot so it doesn't burn. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So you can put that on the blech, and that'll be okay. So there's different things you can use to elevate it from the heat source.
So are there Harmana rules then generally more stringent in terms of covering something with a blanket or a towel, whatever? Are they all feel more stringent about that?
No. This is just in this.
It's an isolated case.
Yes, no, I do agree with you. They are more strict in terms of if it's on a fire. Yes, true. Yeah. Now says the Ramah, the Yeshayin, remember, feel the Makderim and as a Gabi Eish Mamish, Gozman Shimagulu Lamala Lamika the Shari. Says the Ramah that some Paiskim say that even if the pot is sitting on the actual fire, so long as it's revealed on top, it's not considered a Tman and it's permitted.
Who said that?
The Ramah.
Oh, okay.
The Ramah completely argues in the Mechaber, and that's why for us it's not a shaila at all to use a blech. And here, even the Mishnah Berurah agrees. Here, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say, like he did before, well, it's only because we're too involved in our cholent that we didn't want to protest them. No, this everyone agrees. There's a paiskin that we rule like, and therefore, v'chein minhag, and this is the custom. Therefore, by us, there's absolutely no issue with the Shabbos plata. Action is hard. L'nakin taska in the Shabbos when the eish v'shuchli yisol asir mishal. They've come in eish into a gabe eish b'Shabbos yish asir mishal b'dei Yehudi. L'nakin Yehuda mit yisol asir mishal. Zish k'chenu mishal menachas v'lein anei agchalam v'az afi min anei k'tzas dover sheinu miskaven hu b'shari. So we learned this sif. We just finished it. I told you it was very long, very packed. Contains so much information. It's unbelievable how much information the Mechaber and Ramah put into this sif. So there's a few more points here we have to mention still. He says the following. First, number one, the Ramah, based on the Ramah, and I'll tell the rules this way as well in the Shulchan Aruch, we learn that the definition of atmana is if the pot is fully covered, fully insulated, even the top of it. Meaning, if I went ahead and I did much more than the Mechaber, I didn't just rest the pot on the coals. I actually dug a little pit in the fireplace, and I covered it with coals on the side, and I rested the pot inside. So the whole thing now is covered by coals, except for the cover. You can pick up the cover, and you'll see the children. The cover is uncovered. Right? The mustard is okay. The Mechaber says even if only the bottom's touching, it's not okay. Rama says even if the whole thing's touching, it's okay so long as the top is. And if I went ahead and I then swept coals on top of the cover, then that is hatmana. Everyone agrees. You can't get past that. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
But if you didn't cover the top, he says it's okay. And that's how the Shulchan Aruch also rules. So based on that, someone who wraps a towel around the entire electric urn, water urn,
The sides, you mean?
the sides, but not the top of it, should be okay.
Before Shabbos.
Before Shabbos should be okay, because the top of it is uncovered. However, the Al-Fedrin Madura Basra, based on Rabbeinu Tam, is stringent and rules that even if only majority of the walls are covered, it's no good.
Wait 1 second, hold on. Wait. But not the top, but the majority of the walls.
Even if only majority of the walls, and not the top.
And
correct.
not the top.
It's no good. So he's machmir. So this is like an arbitration between the Mechaber and Ramah in terms of the level of atmana. How much atmana is considered prohibited atmana?
Yeah. What does the Mishnah Brewer do with that?
The Mishnah also brings this.
Which thing?
He brings the stringent opinion of the majority.
Like the Alter Rebbe.
And it's Rabbeinu Tam. It's opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam was a Rishon.
So the Alter Rebbe is aligned with Rabbeinu Tam.
Yeah, so that's, also Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was machmir like this opinion. That's why he prohibited using crackpots on Shabbos. According to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he says crackpots fulfills the prohibited conditions of hatmana.
Even with the tinfoil.
Ashkenaz.
Even with the tinfoil, it doesn't matter.
He says hatmana. The tinfoil is only to get rid of the shahiyah prohibition. The prohibition, you can't leave less than half-cooked food on an uncovered flame. The hatmana prohibition, it doesn't matter if the food's half-cooked or not half-cooked. Doesn't matter if the fire's covered or not covered. Right? It's always also. He says, "Hey, it's like you did what I just said. You dug a pit in the fireplace, and you put the pot inside, and it's covered by coals on the bottom and the sides, and only the top is uncovered." So I agree the Ramah. I'm not arguing that the Ramah says it's mutter. Of course, he says black and white it's mutter. But there's opinions who argue. We are machmir like those opinions who argue.
So the Alter Rebbe would hold that the crockpot is surrounding the crockpot. But also, even furthermore, the crockpot does have a top, usually a glass top. Does that not count as something that would make it even worse?
No, because it's not covered. That's part of the pot. It's only if the cover's
that's
covered.
Not considered insulation.
No, top. It's part of the pot. Otherwise, every pot would be considered insulation. So what's the heter of using the crockpot? So it's a big machlokes in Moshe Feinstein and Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. It's a big machlokes between poskim in America and poskim in Israel.
So, but the Alter Rebbe said no.
Here in Israel, how often do you see people using crockpots? It's not so often.
I do. But
did you bring it from America or did you buy it here?
I don't remember.
I just saw now last week in Barco that they were selling a special crockpot with a hashgacha for use for Shabbos. I've never seen crockpots being sold here in Israel.
Wait a second. What does it matter, Israel? The Alter Rebbe says no. You're saying his stringency is that now you can't surround.
What's the machlekes about? Shlomo Zalman says it's considered hatmana. Moshe Feinstein says, hey, hatmana is only if the material touches the pot. Here, there's nothing touching the pot.
It sort of surrounds it.
It's next to it.
Yeah.
But is it hugging it? Is it touching it? So you can't compare it to the case of coals.
Okay, so the Alter Rebbe is saying you can't wrap. It would be only if it's truly like sealed wrap, like really close.
So, for example, a person took nice thick tinfoil, surrounded the inside of the crock pot with that tinfoil, and then pushed his pot inside. Everyone would agree it's no good, according to the final ruling, because the heat material is actually touching and garbing the crock pot.
But the little...
But if you put a little very thin piece, and there's air, there's vacuum in between the walls of the crock pot, of the inner pot and the outer layer of tinfoil, then that would be the dispute. The Moshe says it's got to touch in order to be considered hatmana, while Shlomo Zalman says, give me a break. You're doing you're maximizing your insulation here. You're doing as best as you can to insulate. Okay. What do they want to do? Make a crock pot that you have to take a hammer and bang it in? They need it to make space so it goes in.
Okay, so what about our famous urn situation here? If the towel was used just to wrap and it wasn't hugging really, it's just with this little air, as much air certainly as the
crock pot. As I told you, if it's air, right.
So no, not the top though. The top is that breaks the issue.
I'm explaining. So if it doesn't, by there in that case, again, you're maximizing the insulation. So even though it's not touching at every single corner, since you're maximizing the insulation, it would be a problem.
But it's not, but it's just like the crock pot, it's not.
You're saying it'd be the same flakes.
Yeah, it's not touching. Let's say it's not, it's only like, it's around, but there's at least a little, like, millimeter, like in a crock pot, it's about a millimeter of space between the two. But wait, the other issue is the top, but the top is covered, maybe that's a problem.
Well, that's a problem on Shabbos. Before Shabbos, it's not a problem.
It wouldn't be.
Before Shabbos.
So in other words, it could have the top covered just like he does, and it could be the same as the crock pot if it's not touching if there's some space between the towel and the sides. Even with the top covered, it might be permissible.
I know what you're saying. If it's like a tent, that it's throughout the whole, meaning from the handles and down, it's not touching at all. Mm-hmm. No area of it, from the handles and down, is touching the actual pot, then it would be subject to the dispute.
Okay, so because a crock pot, you're saying, doesn't really touch anywhere. It's very close all the way around, but it doesn't really touch. Yes. I don't know if it doesn't touch. Does it not touch?
Of course it doesn't touch. Otherwise you would hear a screeching sound when you put it in.
Okay. Interesting. So you're saying that because that touches a good bit, but if we could arrange that in such a way that the towel really draped and maybe, you're saying if it touched,
it's more lenient. I agree with you. It would be more lenient. So have an added leniency.
Even if the towel, like at one point, did have some touching, a little touch here and there.
Below the handle?
Yeah.
No, so then that's where I told you already before that happens by all pots. By all pots, there's areas that doesn't touch because of the handle. The handle causes a drape.
Yes. So why doesn't that protect it then? Why isn't that good?
Because you're maximizing your atmana.
Because the intent is to.
You're doing it the normal way atmana is done.
Interesting. Below the handles. What about?
Now there's another chiddush here that we just read. So he packed in Shiur, Chazar, and Hatmana all in one sif. There's another chiddush here that we just read in the Ramah. And then he says the following. What happens in the case, now even though the case is theoretical for us, we're going to learn practical examples. In other cases, we can learn from this rule and apply it. What happens if on Shabbos, before Shabbos, let's say we're camping out in Meron for Shabbos Lag Ba'omer, we made this bonfire, we made a pit, we put the coals inside, we rested the pot inside of the pit. They're following the Ramah, right? The Ramah says if the top isn't covered, it's okay. And now they want to take out food on Shabbos. So you can't take out food on Shabbos from a pot that's sitting on coals. So you have to remove it. Now what's going to happen if I take the handles and I lift up the pot?
Wait, the Ramah doesn't allow putting the pot on the coals? What do you do?
The Ramah, sure he does.
Putting the pot on the coals before Shabbos?
Yeah.
On the coals?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't consider it Hatmana.
Correct.
Oh, it's the only other opinion.
Only Mecham. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen when I take out the pot? What's going to happen? The coals are going to move, and cause havara, and cause fire, cause extinguishing or igniting. It's going to cause a biblical transgression, which is a psikration. It's inevitable. So, obviously, a Jew cannot do this on Shabbos, as a prohibition of doing malach on Shabbos is not just against doing an action of the actual malacha, but even against doing an action that inevitably causes a malacha to happen. So even I can't say, well, I'm not intending to step on the ant. I'm just trying to walk to shul. But if you see an ant in front of you and you step on it, then you killed the ant. It's called a psikration. Right? A psikration is that an inevitable action is forbidden even if you didn't intend to do the action. So to here, I couldn't care less about the coals. I'm not intending in them making a fire, igniting, extinguishing. But nonetheless, it's automatic reaction. So he says here that you can then ask a Gentile. You can ask a Gentile to remove it for you.
So why is the bed?
One second. You can ask a guy to remove it for you. Why is a guy allowed? We have a Isser of Amir Lanachri. Since when do we allow Gayim to do malacha for us? So this is the great rule that we learn from this halacha. This is the halacha that's the source of this rule. And the Alter Rebbe also brings it. It's mutter to ask a guy to do something forbidden on Shabbos if the action itself is permitted and it's just that it causes an inevitable consequence. So I'm allowed to ask a Gentile, if let's say I see a huge ant pile that is on the sidewalk, and I'm unable to walk because of it, because I'm going to kill an ant. There's no way, they're blocking the whole road. There's no way for me to go anywhere. So I can ask if I have a nice big brute Gentile next to me. I can ask him to lift me up. Can you walk me to the other side? I'm allergic to ants, and he's going to kill about 5,000 ants on his walking. It's fine. Why? Because I didn't ask him to kill any ants. I asked him to do a permitted thing, which is to pick me up and bring me to the other side.
And he himself, he doesn't have to benefit from this?
No benefit. It's mutter to ask a guy to do an action for you on Shabbos, which is permitted, even if situation causes an issur to happen. The practical example that we learned from this, I've mentioned this a number of times, if you left your light on in your fridge, well, you cannot open it, you can certainly ask a Gentile to open it, as the act of opening up a fridge is not usher on Shabbos. Oh, it's going to cause your light to turn on. I didn't ask him to do that. It's an inevitable consequence. And this is a general rule we learn, and we apply it in all cases, not just in this case, in any case that it's just an inevitable consequence. You're allowed to ask a guy to do it for you on Shabbos.
Back to you doing, isn't it? What is the case with the dragging a bed across with the
that's a classical case of psikration.
So that fits into this fine?
You can ask a guy. You can't do that, but you can ask a guy.
You can't do it yourself?
No.
Okay.
You can ask a guy to do it.
Secration means secration.
Okay, this is the end of the laws of Shiur, and Sif Aleph, Sif Beis, we better begin the laws of Chazara. We'll continue it next week.
This is not reviewable inside here?
It is.
Everything you just did today is reviewable inside here?
Yes.
Which pages? Okay, but you didn't learn how to do it, you said, for some reason.
Well, we did this already in our previous incarnation of this course,
Yeah.
remember? I didn't want to do a repeat.
Yeah.